Maybe I could use some help.
Diablo's Vessel of Hatred expansion clearly shows us Neyrelle in possession of Mephisto's Soulstone going back to the jungles of Nahantu, where we'll once again experience Kurast, as well as the Travincal, the temple where we originally found Mephisto. The temple which was home to Mephisto's chamber, the Durance of Hatred. Although we did encounter him there in Diablo 2, one question remains: how did he even end up being in the Travincal, corrupting the High Council of the Zakarum, and then escaping to awaken Diablo to his true form? And frankly, how did a primeval end up in Sanctuary anyway? In this video, we'll be answering those questions and diving deep into Mephisto's history on Sanctuary. The first time Mephisto landed in Sanctuary was among his brothers, Diablo and Belial. See, all three of the primevals were pushed out of hell by the lesser evils Auriel, Durance, Azmodan, and Belial through a master plan that Belial and Azmodan conducted together. This was due to the fact that after the Sin War and the peace between the High Heavens and Burning Hells, where the eternal conflict was at last paused for the time being, the primevals had such a fascination with Sanctuary and trying to manipulate and pull strings from the shadows that the lesser evils grew frustrated and decided, hey, if you love Sanctuary so much, here's a little push, and exiled them out of hell. During this time, known as the Dark Exile, the Archangel Tyrael sensed that the primevals were now among Sanctuary, and he went and gathered members from the different mage clans at the time in forming a group called the Herodrum. And the goal of these mages, which included Jared Kane, who is an ancestor of the Deckard Kane we know and love, our good old Zoltan Kuhl from Diablo 3, and Tal Rasha, who had imprisoned Belial in Diablo 2. Now, during the hunt for the primevals, Mephisto was first discovered in the deserts of Aranok. You will know this area from Diablo 2 because that's where Act 2 takes place in, including Luke Ghislaine. So during his time there, Mephisto resurrected all of the undead, all of the mummies from the pyramids and the crypts around Luke Ghislaine. Through this army, he managed to escape east to Kyrgyzstan, and in one of the urban centers of the region, the Herodrum were able to confront him. Although many innocent casualties were unfortunately lost during this battle, the Herodrum were able to defeat Mephisto and trap him into the Soulstone, him being the first of the three primevals that were captured. Upon securing Mephisto in his Soulstone, Tal Rasha was very close to the monks of the Zakarum temple. The Zakarum at the time was a sprawling faith with a foothold on the eastern continent, and covering it in a nutshell, this faith was founded unintentionally by an individual named Akarat, who through meditation achieved a form of nirvana and sanctuary where he was able to see the light or the angelic side of humanity, or the Nephilim, whichever you want to call them, and how to harness it. And he preached to individuals how they can discover the light within themselves as well. At the time, the Zakarum's capital was in Nahantu, when back then it was called the Tarajan Jungles. And these monks of the Zakarum faith placed Mephisto's Soulstone underneath a temple of worship called the Travincal. Over the centuries of his imprisonment, Mephisto was still able to exert his hatred and presence to the individuals around his prison. And after centuries of sowing discord in the Zakarum church, Mephisto was at last able to corrupt the highest officials in the Zakarum church, known as the High Council. The 5 members of the High Council, corrupted by Mephisto's influence, split his Soulstone into 7 different shards, which broke his seal, and his essence was finally free in Sanctuary. What was left was for him to take on a host, and the more powerful the host, the more powerful he would be in Sanctuary. As such, he attempted to corrupt the highest figure in the Zakarum faith, who was known as the Khalim, which I believe is how it's pronounced. And at the time, the Khalim, which is essentially the Pope of the Zakarum, was known as Khalim. You will remember that name from the Diablo 2 quest. Anyway, Khalim was so pure in his faith that he was immune to Mephisto's influence and his attempt to possess him as his vessel. But Mephisto absolutely would not stop there. What he did next was he had the 5 High Council members who he now had under his control kill Khalim, dismember him, and bury his body parts all over Kuros. With Khalim gone, another priest named Sankakur was promoted to the Khagan position, and Mephisto was able to successfully possess him, giving himself form in Sanctuary. Upon fully forming in the mortal plane, Mephisto chose to stay in his original prison, which was the Durance under the Travincal temple. Here, he had the High Council craft and build the compelling orb which spread his influence throughout the entire Zakarum faith, successfully corrupting it. This caused members of the Zakarum church to be overcome by zealotry, developing a seething hatred towards anyone not part of the faith, which is why the Zakarum led armies to the west into Honduras to establish a foothold and spread the faith there. And one such bishop from the Zakarum faith, fully corrupted by Mephisto, was sent in that direction. We'll save his story and his impact on resurrecting Diablo for another video. Now that we know why Mephisto was in the Travincal in the first place, we have to answer the next question. What is the goal in him heading back there? Although it looks like Neyrelle is driving that journey, it's very clear that ever since she grabbed onto Mephisto's soulstone, that he's been the one behind the wheel. One theory that I have is, if you think about Sankakur's tomb, who is the original vessel of Mephisto's embodiment in Sanctuary back in Diablo 2, we see it in Diablo 4. The amount of hatred pouring from the deceased Sankakur's tomb was so intense that anybody around the vicinity for too long will be fully overwhelmed by Mephisto's hatred. That makes me think that if Mephisto is indeed behind the wheel, where would he be most powerful than back in the Durance of Hate itself? And who knows what he's going to do once he arrives. If you have any ideas, leave a comment down below. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. By the way, if you do enjoy watching streams, I am replaying the entirety of the Diablo series with a story and lore focused perspective that I will be using to make future videos with. That being said, if you do enjoy Diablo lore and enjoyed this video, please subscribe and give the video a like to help support the channel. Thank you.